Hello, my name is Austin Habish, the founder of Think Catholic, and you're listening to the Summa podcast, where we study St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologiae in a way simple and insightful for anyone to understand. The Summa podcast is brought to you by Think Catholic. Taking two questions of the Summa a day, we'll seek to summarize St. Thomas's responses, discovering the brilliance of Aquinas and his Catholic faith is day 172. So let's get started. We're covering today questions 108 and 109 of the Secunda Secundae, that is, of vengeance and of truth. The translation that I always use in these podcasts is the one generously provided to me by Ave Maria Press, the 5-volume set translated by the Fathers of the English Dominican province, which you can now get at a discounted price from Ave Maria Press's site by typing in the code SUMMA10. And so here we go. Article 1, whether vengeance is lawful. As it is written in the book of Deuteronomy, vengeance is mine, and recompense for the time when their foot shall slip, for the day of their calamity is at hand, and their doom comes swiftly. Thus, vengeance cannot be intrinsically evil. If goodness itself, God makes promises to take vengeance on some. But first, what is vengeance? Within this article, it is defined as infliction of a penal evil on one who has sinned. We know that God inflicts vengeance on those who die in mortal sin, the voluntary enemies of God with eternal damnation. We know that the state inflicts a prison sentence on those who have broken the law in a grievous way. So whether it be through our experience of the state or even the family where fathers discipline their children, we know that vengeance, as we have defined it here, is a lawful part of justice. The nuance provided within this article is that for an act of vengeance to be lawful, from the aspect of the avenger, the intention must be correct. For the father who punishes his son out of joy of inflicting evil on his son is an evil person, evil because this stems from hatred of his son. But a father who disciplines his son out of love for him, who seeks to cast out the evil within him by penal remedies for the sake of saving his soul, this is a just man. Article 2, whether vengeance is a special virtue. Is vengeance a unique virtue, a virtue annexed to justice? And Aquinas' response is quite weighty, philosophically, so we will quote him and then explain. He writes, "Virtues perfect us so that we follow in due manner our natural inclinations, which belong to the natural right. Wherefore to every definite natural inclination there corresponds a special virtue. Now there is a special inclination of nature to remove harm, for which reason animals have the irascible power, distinct from the concupiscible. In simpler terms, our Creator has endowed the human being with certain ends and goals to be pursued, along with the means of attaining those ends, our own preservation, propagation, and perfection. From here, the additional quality or ingrained habit in us for rightly pursuing these ends is what we call virtue. So coming back to vengeance specifically then, just as our nature naturally seeks its own preservation, its own defense against threats for which we have the passions of anger or courage or hope, the virtue then, or good additional quality of this defense is what we call the virtue of vengeance. And it is distinguished in the same way all virtues are distinguished from one another, by their proper object, what the virtue is about. And here it is about the evil which now justly merits being set right, being avenged. In St. Thomas's words, man resists harm by defending himself against wrongs, lest they be inflicted on him, or he avenges those which have already been inflicted on him, with the intention not of harming, but of removing the harm done, and this belongs to vengeance. Therefore, vengeance is a special virtue. Article 3, whether vengeance should be wrought by means of punishments customary among men. Since the punishments listed in the Old Testament are customary among men, St. Thomas sees both from the aspect of the revealed law and the natural law an endorsement of the following punishments as recorded by Cicero. That the laws recognize 8 kinds of punishment, namely death, whereby man is deprived of life, stripes, retaliation, or the loss of an eye for eye, whereby man forfeits his bodily safety, slavery and imprisonment, whereby he is deprived of freedom, exile, whereby he is banished from his country, fines, where he is deprived of his riches, ignominy, where he loses his good name. These are our general categories of vengeance inflicted by the state, along with some specific applications of those categories. Article 4, whether vengeance should be taken on those who have sinned involuntarily. And I would recommend the listener read this article in full because it's good to take to prayer. All sin, for it to be a sin, must be voluntary. Even original sin is voluntary in the sense that mankind is one race, one family, and the head of that race, from whom we have all come from, voluntarily lost for the race, for all of his offspring, the inheritance by way of generation of sanctifying grace. We are implicated in that choice like my hand is implicated in my choices, like the citizen is implicated in the president's choices. Therefore, our question here is, does God punish those who, having been cleansed from original sin by baptism, go throughout their entire life without sin? We'll look at the life of Christ. He didn't contract original sin. He had no earthly father, and yet he was punished unjustly by the world, and according to God's providence, by an evil and envious world, as Scripture says of him. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. And then of a certain righteous man it is said in the book of Wisdom, there was one who pleased God and was loved by him, and while living among sinners he was taken up. He was caught up lest evil change his understanding, or guile deceive his soul, which seems to denote God allowing a man to die early in the ordinary workings of providence in order to save his soul. Thus we can conclude as a general rule, God may punish a man either for the salvation of his soul or for his further perfection and glory through patient endurance, even if he doesn't sin. This would be an example of vengeance without voluntary sin, but not without reason or cause that God has in mind. But God would never punish a man spiritually, either through the withdrawal of grace or through eternal damnation without voluntary sin on the part of the man. St. Thomas writes, punishment may be considered as a medicine, not only healing the past sin, but also preserving from future sin or conducing to some good. And in this way, a person is sometimes punished without any fault of his own, yet not without cause. But no one is punished in spiritual goods without any fault on his part, neither in this nor in the future life, because in the latter punishment is not medicinal, but a result of spiritual condemnation. Then moving on to question 109 of truth. Article 1, whether truth is a virtue. We defined truth a while ago as conformity, adequation of thought to the thing, equality of the mind to reality. So why is it that we see truth here as a virtue annexed to justice? Aquinas explains that the virtue he has in mind here is truthfulness, the stable quality habit of speaking or acting truthfully. And since habits are that which make a man good and his actions good, and saying what is true is a good act, we must then ask, through what quality is this act coming through? And that quality in the man we term truthfulness. Article 2, whether truth is a special virtue. Is truthfulness a distinct virtue? And as we've been saying, if the object of the virtue is unique, then we will have a unique species or kind of virtue. And the virtue of truthfulness is distinguished by the following criteria according to St. Thomas. There is a special order whereby our externals, whether words or deeds, are duly ordered in relation to something, as sign to things signified, and thereto man is perfected by the virtue of truth, wherefore it is evident that truth is a special virtue. Article 3, whether truth is a part of justice. A good reminder here is given about what constitutes a potential part of justice or its annexed to virtues. St. Thomas writes, a virtue is annexed to justice as secondary to a principal virtue through having something in common with justice while falling short from the perfect virtue thereof. So truthfulness has in common with justice the notion of equality. A truthful man seeks to equal with his words or other signs what he actually is and what he actually knows to be true. Yet truthfulness falls short of the strict definition of particular justice, justice considered as an individual virtue, because according to Aquinas, justice has to do with a legal debt, which man must equal with his actions, like paying $5 for the $5 Pepsi, whereas truthfulness concerns the debt of virtue. There's a moral debt which we owe to our neighbor and the common good, that we speak and act according to the way things actually are. Giving the last word to St. Thomas, he tells us, since man is a social animal, one man naturally owes another whatever is necessary for the preservation of human society. Now, it would be impossible for men to live together unless they believed one another as declaring the truth, one to another. Article 4 in our last article, whether the virtue of truth inclines rather to that which is less, meaning, does the virtue of truthfulness incline a man to speak less of himself than the opposite, speaking much or highly of himself? And although it is never permitted for a person to lie about his actual ability by means of denial, like if I said, I cannot speak or read English in some crazy attempt to seem humble, for this is simply telling a falsehood, this is not permitted. But a man might say, I have a grasp of the fundamentals of English, even if they also have quite advanced knowledge concerning English, because by saying that they have the fundamentals, which is true, they have not lied by not mentioning they also have advanced English. They are just inclining to that which is less, to use St. Thomas's phrase. And this is a beautiful thing to do, as Aquinas tells us. So closing with his words, he writes, those who make less account of themselves are a source of pleasure, since they seem to defer to others by their moderation. Hence the apostle says in 2 Corinthians, though I should have a mind to glory, I shall not be foolish, for I will say the truth. But I forbear lest any man should think of me above that which he seeth in me, or anything he heareth from me. And with that, we close another episode. We have just finished covering questions 108, 109 of the Secunda Secundae, that is, of vengeance and of truth. My name is Austin Habish with Think Catholic, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow.